What if I told you that the greatest successes in human history were not built on genius, but on a mountain of failures? What if the secret to changing the world wasn't in getting it right the first time, but in being willing to get it wrong 99 times? This is the story of a man who was called a fool, a dreamer, and a failure. And they were right. He was all of those things. But he was also something more. Stick with us for this incredible journey, and if our stories help you grow, consider subscribing so you never miss a tale of inspiration. Now, let's begin. Our story begins in a place forgotten by the rain. A small, sun-scorched town named Viridia, where the earth was a tapestry of cracks, and the wells whispered dusty secrets of a time when water was plentiful. The people of Viridia had learned to live with less. Their hopes, much like their crops, had withered under the relentless sun. In this town lived a man named Elias Vance. He wasn't a scientist with a fancy degree or an engineer with corporate funding. Elias was a tinkerer, a dreamer, whose hands were more comfortable with gears and wires than with a farmer's plow. His garage was his sanctuary and his laboratory, a chaotic cathedral of discarded parts, ambitious blueprints, and the lingering smell of ozone and burnt metal. From the outside, it looked like a junkyard, but to Elias, it was a universe of possibility. He was possessed by a single audacious idea: to build a machine that could pull water from the very air itself. Not just a dehumidifier that collected a few ounces, but a device capable of quenching the thirst of his entire town. He called it the atmospheric hydro-converter. The townsfolk called it Elias's folly. Failure number one was a quiet affair. He flipped a switch and nothing happened. The machine, a humble assembly of parts scavenged from the town dump, remained silent, lifeless. He checked the wiring, replaced a faulty capacitor, and tried again. Failure number two was louder. A loud pop, a puff of acrid blue smoke, and the distinct smell of failure. He spent a week tracing the short circuit. The early failures were almost a game. Failures 3 through 17 were a symphony of errors. There were loud bangs that sent the neighbor's cat scurrying, strange humming noises that fizzled into silence, and one memorable incident where the machine sprayed a fine black soot all over his face and walls. He would laugh, wipe the grime from his brow, and meticulously document the result in a thick, leather-bound journal. Each entry began not with failure, but with lesson. Lesson 17. Standard iron conduits cannot handle the required energy resonance. They overheat and melt. He was fueled by pure, uncut optimism. He was convinced he was just one small adjustment away from a breakthrough. He poured his savings into the project, buying better components, more resilient materials. The townsfolk would see him hauling strange metal objects back to his garage and shake their heads. Samuel, the owner of the general store, would often sigh as Elias spent his last dollars on strange components.
"Elias, son, there's good work in the fields, honest work. This machine of yours, the sky gives water when it chooses. You can't force its hand."
Elias would just smile, a determined glint in his eye.
We just have to learn to ask it nicely, Samuel. That's all.
But as the failures mounted, the game became less fun. The optimism began to tarnish. Failures 18 through 39 were more complex, more frustrating. The machine would run, sometimes for hours. It would hum with perceived power. Frost would form on its coils. But it would produce nothing more than a few pathetic, muddy drops of water, tasting of rust and disappointment. His savings dwindled. then vanished. He started selling his possessions, first his grandfather's old watch, then his comfortable furniture, then his truck. His garage became his home, a small cot squeezed between a workbench and the hulking, silent testament to his obsession. The whispers in the town grew louder. Poor Elias, he's lost his mind chasing clouds. Children who once looked at him with awe now pointed and snickered, calling him Dry Spell Elias. Each word was a tiny crack in his armor of resolve. But was this the moment he would give up? Far from it. The doubt of others only seemed to pour fuel on his internal fire. The next stage of his journey was defined by desperation. Failures 40 through 72 were heartbreaking. These weren't simple malfunctions anymore. They were catastrophic collapses of hope. One sweltering afternoon, marking failure number 61, the machine roared to life like never before. The energy readings were perfect. The condensation plates were ice cold, and for a glorious, heart-stopping moment, a thin, steady stream of clear water began to trickle from the output nozzle. Elias wept. He fell to his knees, tears of joy tracing paths through the grime on his face. He had done it. He had actually done it. He ran out of his garage, screaming with a wild, primal joy.
It works! It works! I did it!
He grabbed the first person he saw, an old farmer leading a weary mule. He dragged the bewildered man to his garage to witness the miracle. But as they burst through the door, their elation turned to horror. A high-pitched whine was building from the machine. The trickle of water sputtered, turned to steam, and then, with a deafening screech of protesting metal, a central gear shattered. The entire machine convulsed, shook itself apart, and fell silent. A pool of hot, greasy water spread across the floor. The miracle was over. The farmer simply stared, then slowly backed away, shaking his head, leaving Elias alone in the wreckage. The silence in that garage was heavier and more crushing than any explosion had ever been. That failure was different. It hadn't just broken his machine, it had broken a piece of his spirit. He almost gave up. For a full week he didn't touch the machine. He sat on his cot, staring at the mangled heap of metal that had consumed his life, his money, and his reputation. The journal lay closed on the table, its empty pages a silent accusation. The voices of the town echoed in his head: fool, dreamer, failure. Maybe they were right. Maybe Samuel was right. You can't force the hand of the sky. As he sat there, on the precipice of surrender, his eyes drifted to an old, faded photograph of his grandfather. He remembered something his grandfather used to say, a simple piece of farmer's wisdom.
The driest days, son, often have the wettest mornings. The world gives you its water freely before the sun even asks. You just have to know how to collect the dew.
Dew. Such a simple concept. He had been trying to brute force a solution, to rip the water from the air with power and chilling agents. He had been fighting the atmosphere. But his grandfather's words sparked a new thought, a paradigm shift. What if he didn't need to fight it? What if he just needed to persuade it? This singular thought, born from a simple memory, was the tiny spark that reignited the fire. But this was not the end of his struggle. In fact, his most challenging failures were still ahead. How does a man with nothing left rebuild not just his machine, but his own belief in the impossible? He didn't rebuild the old machine. He salvaged what he could and started over. His new design was different. It was quieter, more elegant. It was based on emulating nature, not conquering it. He studied the intricate patterns on the leaves of desert plants that collected morning dew. He researched the unique surface of the Namib desert beetle, which could harvest moisture from the fog. His work was now silent, almost secretive. He worked through the nights, fueled by cheap coffee and a resolve that had been forged in the crucible of utter failure. The town had mostly forgotten him now, writing him off as a harmless eccentric. This anonymity was a blessing. There was no one left to disappoint but himself. Failures 73 through 99 were the most agonizing of all. They were failures of nuance, of inches and degrees. The machine would work, but not efficiently enough. It would produce a liter of water an hour when he needed 100. It would work only in the pre-dawn hours, but shut down as the day grew warm. Each attempt was a step forward, but each result felt like a new wall to climb. He was no longer just a tinkerer. He had become a true scientist. His journal now filled with complex equations, atmospheric pressure charts, and detailed molecular diagrams. He learned about hydrophilic and hydrophobic surfaces. He learned about thermal conductivity and nucleation points. Each of the 99 lessons in his journal was a ghost, a teacher, a guide. Finally came the day of the 100th attempt. The machine was unrecognizable from its first iteration. It wasn't a monstrous engine of gears and coils anymore. It was a slender, silver tower covered in a fine mesh that mimicked the texture of a beetle's shell, and a series of plates that cooled and warmed in a gentle, rhythmic cycle like a living thing breathing. It was quiet, elegant, and beautiful. There was no fanfare, no audience, just Elias, his machine, and the hope of a thirsty town sleeping under a blanket of stars. He had sold the last thing of value he owned, his grandfather's journal of lessons, to a collector to pay for the final components. He now knew all its lessons by heart. He flipped the switch. For a moment, there was only a low, gentle hum. It was nothing like the roar of his previous creations. It was the sound of a whisper, not a shout. He watched, his heart pounding in his chest, his breath caught in his throat. Minutes turned into an hour. Nothing. His spirit sagged. Had it all been for nothing? Was this to be the final, silent failure? Failure number 100? He slumped against the workbench, the weight of 1,000 days of effort crashing down on him. But then he heard it, a sound he had dreamed of for years. His head snapped up. On the very tip of the central conduit, a single, perfect drop of water was forming, shimmering in the dim light of the garage. It grew, trembled for a moment, and then fell, landing in the collection basin with a sound that was louder and more beautiful than any symphony. Another followed. Then another, and another, a slow, steady rhythm, a heartbeat of hope. The trickle began, not a pathetic, muddy stream, but a flow of water so pure and clear it looked like liquid moonlight. It wasn't a violent torrent, but a gentle, persistent offering. It was working. It was really, truly working. The next morning, the people of Viridia woke to a strange sight. A long, sleevy snake from Elias Vance's garage to the dry, dusty basin of the town's central well, and from it flowed a steady stream of fresh, clean water. People emerged from their homes, hesitant at first, then with growing excitement. They watched in stunned silence as the well, which had been dry for a generation, slowly began to fill. Samuel, the old store owner, was the first to approach. He dipped a bucket in, raised it, and looked at the water as if it were a ghost. Then he looked at Elias, who stood quietly by his garage, his face calm. No one called him Dry Spell Elias ever again. Elias Vance's invention didn't just save Viridia. The designs, which he shared freely with the world, were replicated in thousands of arid communities across the globe. He didn't become fabulously wealthy. He didn't seek fame. His reward was not in patents or profits, but in the pictures he received from distant lands, pictures of children drinking clean water, of green shoots rising from once barren soil. He once held up his old, tattered journal for a visiting reporter. It was the first copy he had made after buying back the original.
People ask me how it felt to fail 99 times. The truth is, I never failed once. I discovered 99 ways that the machine would not work. Each one was a lesson. Each one was a step. Failure isn't the opposite of success. It's the path to it.
The story of Elias Vance isn't just about inventing a machine. It's a testament to the indomitable power of the human spirit. It's a reminder that every stumble, every fall, every time the world tells you no, is an opportunity to learn, to adapt, and to grow stronger. How many times have you given up after the first, second, or 10th failure? What great invention, what work of art, what personal breakthrough lies dormant within you, waiting on the other side of your 99th attempt? The world doesn't remember the critics who called Elias a fool. It remembers the wells that are full. It doesn't celebrate those who play it safe. It honors those who are brave enough to fail and fail and fail again until they finally change the world. Your journey is your own. Your machine might be a business, a relationship, a personal goal, or a dream you're scared to even admit. Don't be afraid of the failures. Don't fear the lessons. Embrace them, document them, learn from them. Because your 100th attempt might not just change your life, it might just change the world. What is the 99 failures story of your life? Share your own journey of resilience in the comments below. We read every one because these are the stories that give us all strength. If this story inspired you, please share it with someone who needs to hear that it's okay to fail. And for more stories that help you grow, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications, because every great success is just a story of resilience waiting to be told.